sorry about that. Okay. So apologies about that. My name is Dwaraknath, and I am a fourth-year electrical engineer, and I'll be presenting to you today the traffic, air quality, and environmental justice of the South Coast Air Basin during the COVID-19 shutdowns. So just some context, I'm sure many of you are currently have experienced the current pandemic that we're going on, and especially the government-induced lockdowns that were caused because of the pandemic. So these lockdowns did have a lot of adverse effects, and one of these effects that we're looking at in this research is the traffic reductions that if you guys do drive, you may have noticed quite a bit because due to the lockdowns, many people were staying home and they weren't going out as much. So because of that, we did see a lot of reduction in terms of traffic activity experienced in Southern California. So we'll be going over that today. So looking at the graph on the bottom of the screen with the colored lines, you can see it's different counties highlighted in Southern California. This plot shows the VMT or vehicle miles traveled levels of California during this time. As you can see that the most affected regions or had the greatest VMT drops were the Orange counties, Los Angeles, and Ventura. So we'll be focusing on these as well as Riverside and San Bernardino to conduct our analysis and see the results of these effects. On the graph on the top, you can see a plot again of the VMT of District 7, which is the LA County. Here you can see a timeline of how traffic was experienced on a weekly basis. And you can see here that from between weeks 1 to 9, which is between January and February, stayed around baseline. And then after March 1st, so beginning of March, a huge plummet in VMT reported. And then by mid-April, you see a rebound, but never actually reaching the current levels or the levels that were recorded post or pre-COVID-19. So those are the patterns that we're looking at today. Before going into more about the data being analyzed, we'll be going over exactly what data we'll be looking at. So first is we'll be looking at traffic flow data that's collected from the Caltrans system, which is a government database. We'll be looking at data for traffic flow, which is the amount of vehicles recorded on a highway at a time, as well as the speed that was recorded at certain times as well along highways. We set a threshold of at least 80% of active sensors. This is because many of the sensors, there are thousands of sensors located across Southern California, and many of these often do experience, for whatever reason, malfunctions or not recording properly. So we made sure that the sensors that we took are emitting accurate information. So we set a threshold of 80% accuracy. And we set a baseline of comparison to January and February 2020, since that was before the government mandated lockdowns even occurred. So that is our pre-COVID baseline of comparison to what's going on now. For air quality trends, we looked at hourly carbon monoxide and NOx levels, and we used the CRAB-AQ-MIS system to collect these recordings. We have air quality sites, a total of 20, which is 4 near road and 16 non-near road sites, and we use a baseline of 2017 and 2019 average diurnal profile to make these baseline comparison. And the final score or data we'll be looking at is from the Cal Enviro Screen, the CES 2.0 score by Cal EPA, which is based on a census tract level, which are smaller regions divided amongst the county based on a number of different factors. So here you see two plots. The first plot on the left is a colored map that has data displayed at a census tract level. This is more of a prelude to the slide coming, a video I'm about to show. But just to have more context, I'll be describing this image so that video makes more sense. So here you see, once again, this is the Southern California region. That includes counties of LA, San Bernardino, Riverside, and Orange counties. The colors represent the levels of COVID or traffic flow change compared to the pre-COVID levels. So yellow indicates a 25 to 100% increase in traffic flow compared to pre-COVID. Orange is 0 to 25% above, pink 0 to 25% below, 25% to 50% is purple, and then 50% to 100% below is dark blue. And then most of the census tracts observed during our timeline we did experience or see a drop of 25 to 100% in traffic flow data. And the graph on the right shows once again the VMT, but this is again in District 7. But you can see for both the total VMT and also the truck VMT levels, you can see truck is slightly experiencing slightly less of a change, but overall trend is definitely very similar to in both cases. So, and then here is the video I was talking about. So what this is, or what this video encompasses, is a week by week comparison of the different weeks from between January 2020 to July 2020, and you'll see week by week how did the levels shift, and you'll be able to visually see it by color. So starting off, I guess, here you can see a lot of pink and orange regions colored, and that means that they're mostly hovering around the baseline of 0 to 25% below or above COVID. And then once I play the video, you can see the weeks are changing, the colors are changing as well. Mostly lighter colors. So here, like not a lot of changes happening. And then here, I'm gonna pause the video. I see huge change in colors. Most of the areas have now turned to pink, meaning that most of them are experiencing now traffic drops of 0 to 25%. And then now playing the video, a lot of the colors are shifting now to those darker purple, blue, a lot of blue areas, a lot of purple areas just popping up. And then now roughly we're like by mid-April, you do see like lighter colors starting to pop up once again. So now it's going back to those pink shades. You'll slowly start seeing more and more orange shades popping up as well, maybe a few yellow counties also popping up. But this is again like a reference to what was mentioned earlier, where most of the change or the biggest drops were experienced right after March till the first week of April. And since then, we've been seeing a gradual return of traffic, but never returning back to the pre-COVID levels. So now after looking at the traffic levels, we wanted to pair it with a more of a local analysis of how the community factors, so if they're maybe socially disadvantaged or any other sort of possible factors affected the traffic flows in any way. And maybe you might have seen the maps above that the patterns, although you can definitely see an overall trend, many counties were just going back and forth in terms of what was being experienced. So what we used to address that was CES score. What CES score is an indicator of if it's a vulnerable population in terms of socioeconomic and environmental exposure. So a high CES score means it's more disadvantaged, and a low CES score, that community is considered a much less disadvantaged area. The image on the right, you can see a heat map, which compares the traffic reductions to the CES scores of different counties. The red is just the more sparse areas, but as you can see along this logarithmic trend line, where it's colored more green, and you may even see a few blues. These areas are more concentrated and are following more of a trend of a low CES score experience, higher traffic drops versus a higher CES score, which is a more disadvantaged community, experience less of a traffic drop. Looking at a few case studies that we did, because obviously looking at the dynamic nature, we decided to dive more into how some communities have different factors that affected the what was experienced, and also looking at the air quality levels too, because that was another big part about this research. We want to see with the drop of traffic, how did if that impact the air quality levels in the local community as well. Neo-COVID overall was not the best experience, but there is a silver lining, and we are given an opportunity to look at how traffic changes have impacted the environment overall. So looking at Anaheim Pampas Lane, you can definitely see a very strong correlation between the CO changes and the traffic drop levels, where a lower CO is recorded at the lowest traffic drop points. Just a little background about Anaheim. This location is located in Orange County and is a highly residential area where a lot of apartments surround it, and is located right next to a school. So our reasoning is this: due to the pandemic and a lot of the lockdowns, obviously schools shut down, so we see a lot less foot traffic, a lot less vehicles passing through the area, probably parents is dropping off their children. So because of those vehicle or traffic reductions, we see a much less reporting of carbon monoxide levels in those areas. And then looking at the NOx scores, as I mentioned, this location is Ontario Etiwanda, which is located in San Bernardino. Here we look at NOx or NOx, and we again see a very strong correlation between the traffic data recorded as well as the NOx levels, where a low traffic score or a high traffic reduction leads to is associated with a low NOx score. And then a little background about this is Ontario Etiwanda is a very warehouse heavy district. So there's a lot of heavy duty vehicles coming in and out. And NOx or NOx is often associated, those emissions are often associated with NOx. So that's why we did a comparison, seeing those levels, and there is definitely a strong correlation to be viewed at this point. I do want to point out that most of the data is though in the upper quadrant. This is because although the trend line is strong, there wasn't much opportunity to see reduction, and that reduction is very brief. And I'll mention it more in the next slide, but this is paired to a lot of the online commerce shipping and the use of warehouse districts during the pandemic as well. So some of the policies that were associated with this research was that due to the remote work of the EJ communities, a lot of these communities were restricted by the nature of the jobs and technology, where disadvantaged communities were unable to find online alternatives to their work. So although they were locked down for a few weeks, they were seen as the first people to go back to work during the pandemic itself, even during like the main peaks of COVID and all the COVID cases and all that. So looking at that, that's why we do see with a lot of disadvantaged communities a less traffic reduction, and we see those communities also experience a higher recovery rate than those advantaged communities who do get the opportunity to stay home and continue online work. On top of that, with higher e-commerce shipping that occurred in the pandemic, with everyone staying home and making purchases online versus going in person, we do see a lot more warehouse activity, which is why in the previous plot, a lot of the data was located on the positive side of the quadrant, because there wasn't a lot of data related to reduction. But we still do see a very strong trend. We just didn't have as many data points as available because the reduction didn't exist as much as the school areas. So overall, what we can see from this research is that traffic shifts were very dynamic in nature. We can say that there is a very strong overall trend to be seen, but to make a grand assumption is very presumptive. And we have to very much look at each community at an individual basis and say, or what certain factors affected this community specifically, or what makes this community unique, and then how does that affect the air quality or the traffic patterns that we're seeing in that area. It can be seen that the more disadvantaged communities are experiencing much less of a traffic drop. As I said, these communities did not have the opportunity to go to online work or have a lot of technology availability to them, and that traffic flow rebounded in disadvantaged communities because they had to go back to work much sooner just in order to support themselves economically and socially. In terms of air quality, the near road and non-near road sites definitely saw a large reductions in CO and NOx, no matter the region, due to these traffic and COVID-19 lockdowns. So that concludes my presentation. Here you can see the acknowledgements and also my contact info in case you want to reach out for any questions about the research conducted. Thank you for letting me present.
Thank you. Can you stop recording now? Thank you so much.